Part 44. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 432. All the disciples showed expressions of uncontrollable astonishment almost at the same time. How could the heartless flower really bloom? Being in Mount Ime, almost all disciples know about the Chwecking flower that exists on the hillside, and naturally know how difficult it is for this Chwecking flower to bloom. As early as when the Empress wrote on the uselessness of Taoist companions, which was regarded as a sacred text by the headmaster and he worked hard to read and understand it, "Headmaster, you planted the extremely precious ruthless flowers that he happened to get on the slopes of Mount Ime. The flower seeds of the heartless flower can be used as a spiritual object to refine poison, because the poison refined from it is extremely poisonous and may even cause damage to the powerful emperor. Therefore, the value of Chwecking flower is extremely high. But only a few people know that the Chwecking flower has another value. Rumor has it that as one of the most precious flower species in ancient times, the heartless flower is used to seeing humans come together and separate without any sincere feelings. As a result, I completely lost my faith and refused to open up. Even if it is planted deep in the ground, the Chwecking flower will never bloom with other flowers. Only after sensing a true love that can be recognized by it, will the loveless flower break out of the ground and bloom. The disciples in Mount Ime have long known this rumor. They have also looked for other monks, couples, or human lovers to come to the hillside here, trying to make the loveless flower bloom. But no matter how I tried, there was no way. Through the unfeigned flower planted here, the disciples became more and more convinced of what the Master and the Empress said, that there was no real and sincere emotion in this world. The story of the Chwecking flower was deeply remembered in their hearts, and they even thought that there was nothing in this world that could make the Chwecking flower truly bloom. But these disciples never expected that just when they had already firmly decided on this idea, the heartless flower would bloom at this moment. The Chwecking flower has actually bloomed. That is to say, the emotion between these two people has even been recognized by the Chwecking flower. How is it possible? But isn't the heartless flower planted here, but it hasn't bloomed for 100 years? I never imagined that such a sincere love actually exists in this world. Could it be that this is the reason why the Empress announced her love? The disciples who originally didn't want to believe it at all started to have subtle changes in their thinking. Other things may not be proven yet, but at this moment, one thing can be confirmed. The affection between these two mysterious people is sincere enough to move people's hearts. It has completely exceeded the scope of what the Empress wrote in The Useless Theory of Taoist Couples. Suddenly it feels so sweet. Before this, I never thought that love could be so sweet. They are too sweet. I actually have some thoughts about falling in love. Their eyes were slightly stagnant. Looking at the scene in front of them, some female disciples felt as if the thoughts that had been solidified in their hearts melted. Impossible, so what if there is true love in this world? It is said in the Empress's book. A truly strong person can only become stronger step by putting aside all emotions and keeping his heart as cold as ice. Falling in love will only corrode people's fighting spirit and character. Anyone who falls in love is destined to never become a strong person. Therefore, no matter how sweet the love between these two people is, they are destined not to go very far on the road of spiritual practice. As if trying her best to refute, Zhang Qingyun suddenly said, "Yes, the word love is a big mountain that blocks our spiritual path. Only if we are not tainted by the world and have nothing to do with love can we become stronger. A truly strong person will never fall in love." As if he suddenly figured it out, other disciples followed him. The disciples suddenly woke up and seemed to react. They shook their heads vigorously, trying to get rid of the influence of the sweet love just now. But just as they struggled to break free, the woman who had been sitting on the hillside finally slowly stood up. Falling in love does not actually have an impact on people's cultivation. It is better to say that when your cultivation reaches a bottleneck period. A sweet love relationship can actually help you break through the shackles and reach a state that you have never been able to reach. Although the understanding in it is different from the practice, it is of great benefit to the practice. Therefore, in this world, there is no saying that falling in love will prevent people from becoming stronger. The cold voice came, causing many disciples to be stunned for a moment. How is that possible? You are obviously lying. Almost all the powerful emperors on Lanchuan continent are alone. Where has it ever been said that love is beneficial to spiritual practice? Of those who have lovers, no one can reach the imperial realm. Zhang Qingyun tried her best to refute, and was even a little irritated by the woman's words. You are deceiving the public with your monstrous words. You are not a witch from the demon sect, trying to shake the ideas we firmly believe in. Which? Do you think I will believe it? Also, what you said is that as long as you have a lover, no one can reach the imperial realm. Are you serious? However, the woman only responded with a cold smile. That's of course. How can people who can be affected by love progress in their spiritual practice? Of course, they will never. Wait, this is it? Zhang Qingyun was halfway through laughing coldly, but a hint of astonishment suddenly appeared in her eyes. Not only her, but all the Emishan disciples suddenly trembled at the same time. Because they clearly felt that the woman in front of them was actually filled with majestic pressure. The pressure was gradually increasing, and as time went by, it seemed to suppress the sky and the sun. It was so powerful, like a huge wave, sweeping over. Such terrible majesty was something that even the sect master Yuziron had never felt before. The power of the emperor, no, this terrifying sense of oppression had even surpassed that of an ordinary emperor. And the source of the sense of oppression was not just one person. When the man stood up, another terrifying imperial power also suppressed him. It was completely different from the sweet atmosphere just now. The couple who were just affectionate and seemed to be completely in love, exuded the aura of the majesty of two emperors. Both of them are the Taoist partners of the emperors. Do they really exist on the Lanchuan continent? I don't know, I've never heard of it. The disciples of Mount Imei were obviously completely dumbfounded. In the past 1,000 years, no one had ever heard of two emperors becoming Taoist partners. But the scene in front of them was exactly like this. Who is it? Stayed in shock, the disciples' eyes were filled with disbelief. And at this moment, the graceful figure finally turned around slowly. Amidst the flowers, they also saw the figure clearly. Empress. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 433. Empress. At this moment, all the female disciples present seemed to be completely stunned. The cold and flawless figure in front of them was the Empress Qingyu, who was revered and believed by the entire Mount Imei. And the man next to Chu Qingyu was the Empress's newly announced lover, Nai Chen. Indeed, there was no other pair of great emperors in Lanchuan continent. But why did the Empress come here, and why did she say that just now? Looking at Chu Qingyu, the disciples present were obviously puzzled, and the shock in their hearts was beyond words. But they soon discovered that the Empress was chatting happily with Nai Chen at the moment, and seemed to have no interest in them. How about it, my wife? My breath covering technique is pretty good. Being able to have a sense of familiarity, but not being able to see through the identity, this is the highest realm of the breath covering technique. Finally revealing his identity, Nai Chen couldn't help but smile slightly. This breath-retaining technique is indeed very mysterious. It can suppress two great emperors' auras at the same time. This is the first time I have seen such a technique. Chu Qingyu also showed a hint of curiosity. But looking at Nai Chen, she obviously cared about something more. Chu Qingyu suddenly lowered her head slightly, with a trace of barely detectable shyness in her voice. Hey, do the words you said just now still count? What are those words? Nai-Chen was slightly stunned. Because the Empress said she wanted to play a play to correct these Mount Ime disciples who already hated love. Nai-Chen used the breath-retaining technique to cover up the auras of the two people and temporarily showed a wave of affection. And, it was the kind without a script. Stupid. Seeing that Nai-Chen suddenly didn't say it, Chu Qingyu immediately showed a hint of anxiety. Of course I'm referring to that sentence. Which sentence is that? Nai-Chen had a subtle smile on his lips. You. Looking at this secretive smile, Chu Qingyu began to wonder if this guy was pretending not to know because he wanted to tease her. But Nai-Chen would not say anything no matter what. With full of expectations, she was confused, but she wanted to hear the answer. Helplessly, Chu Qingyu could only purse her lips and whispered in a very small voice. Of course it's that sentence. To prove it, you have to come here every year to pick a flower for me and say that sentence. The small voice was enough to reveal Chu Qingyu's embarrassment at the moment. So that's what you said, my wife. Nai-Chen couldn't help laughing. Why, is it not possible? Of course, and I will definitely fulfill my promise. Not only will I come once a year, but I will say it as many times as you want to hear it. Tisk, that's not bad. The expression stagnated slightly, and Chu Qingyu felt that her heartbeat seemed to speed up, but she still tried her best to be tough. At this moment, Nai-Chen gently pinched her cheek. Her soft cheek was like cotton candy, and the touch was excellent. You, what are you doing? Ahem, I want to try, my wife, how hard your mouth is. But from the touch, it is still quite soft, of course, just the touch. The meaning of this sentence is naturally very obvious. Chu Qingyu panicked. When did this emperor become hard-mouthed? He, if you didn't become hard-mouthed, are you sure that you would really be as calm as you said those 3 words? Nai-Chen smiled, with a hint of mockery in his smile. Of course. No matter how her heart beat, Chu Qingyu answered immediately. After all, at this moment, the disciples of Mount Ime were still watching. Are you sure? But Nai-Chen, who had expected it, suddenly leaned close to her ear the moment she finished speaking, and quickly said, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. These 3 words were repeated at a very fast speed, like a string of cannons. It seemed to be extremely fast, but every repetition was like a cannonball hitting Chu Qingyu's heart. Moreover, it was a candy cannonball. Chu Qingyu's cheeks flushed immediately. She had never expected Nai-Chen to suddenly do such a ridiculous thing. Damn it, don't say it. Wife, don't you care about this? I really don't care that much, but I love you, I love you, I love you. Ah, I know, I was wrong, just now I was a little bit tough, isn't it enough? Finally, Chu Qingyu couldn't help shouting in shame. Ha ha ha, I finally subdued you, my wife, once again. Nai-Chen was also amused and didn't repeat the words that sounded like the voice of a devil. But even so, Chu Qingyu's resentful eyes and slightly red cheeks did not fade away. The little fist of shame and anger hit Nai-Chen, but she was afraid of hitting too hard, so she didn't dare to use force, resulting in each punch being soft and numb like cotton candy hitting the body. So sweet. Wow, so this is true love. Looking at the scene in front of them, the disciples of Mount Ime next to them suddenly felt their noses sour. Over the years, they have always regarded love as the biggest taboo and sneered at it. But I never thought that one day I would eat such sweet dog food from the Empress, and I was a little addicted to it. At this moment, Chu Qingyu also turned around and looked at the female disciples of Mount Ime. After a long silence, she finally showed a hint of self-mockery. Now, you should understand. Chu Qingyu sighed softly. The reason why I did so much today is actually to prove to you that love is actually different from what I thought it was and what you think it is now. Perhaps there are many insincere loves in the world, but there are also extremely sincere loves. Perhaps love will have some impact on cultivation, but it may also be of great help to your cultivation. Since my current thoughts are completely different from before, it naturally shows that some of my previous concepts are far from absolute. Even the book The Theory of the Uselessness of Taoist Companions is a little too extreme. As for what to do next, I believe you should have an answer in your heart. The great emperor has a powerful strength that can travel across the world. It is precisely because of this that from ancient times to the present, almost no great emperor has been able to face the past and stand up again like Chu Qingyu. Looking at Nai Chen beside him, his clear autumn eyes seemed to be full of affection, absolutely beautiful and moving. At this moment, the hearts of the disciples of Mount Imei, who had been hanging in the air, seemed to be relieved at the same time. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 434. What is love? The disciples in Mount Imei have been thinking about this question for a long time. There are only female disciples in Mount Imei, and the moment they enter the sect, they take the Empress's theory of the uselessness of Taoist companions as their guideline for progress. They hate love and ignore any couples and feelings. Among these disciples, there are women who have been hurt by love, and there are also female disciples who have been influenced by love since they were young. Although they have occasionally wavered, those waverings quickly disappeared with their beliefs, and have never brought such a shock to their hearts. The love shown by the Empress today has far exceeded their understanding of love. Even if it is just the blooming of the heartless flower, it proves to them that there is actually true love in this world. And it is so sweet, even sweet enough to make your teeth fall out. Empress, we understand. Finally, the female disciples of Mount Imei clenched their hands, made up their minds and looked at Chu Qingyu at the same time. Thank you for the Empress's teachings. Although we may not be able to fully accept it for a while, we will try our best to improve our concept of love. Well, that's about right. Looking at the sincere answers of the disciples in front of her, Chu Qingyu nodded with satisfaction, and at the same time, she breathed a sigh of relief. Now, the place that has been most influenced by the theory of the uselessness of Taoist companions that she wrote at the beginning is Mount Imei. There is no way to take back the water that has been spilled, but it has stopped Mount Imei from continuing its pyramid-selling propaganda at the source. At least, the black history should not develop more followers in Lanchuan continent at a terrifying speed. Just when Chu Qingyu was in a good mood and even crossed her legs with joy, suddenly, Zhang Qingyun stepped forward with a guilty look on her face. Thank you for the Queen's teachings, which made us understand how extreme our previous behavior was. The theory of the uselessness of Taoist companions may not be so perfect. In this case, can the Queen write another book to refute the view of the theory of the uselessness of Taoist companions and let the people of the world know the situation? Yes, since the Queen feels that the theory of the uselessness of Taoist companions she wrote before is lacking, why not write another one? That's right, Queen, please write another book and let us learn from it. This sentence instantly caused a boiling sensation. As if the door to a new world was opened, the eyes of the disciples of Mount Imei were brightened and they cheered one after another. The theory of the uselessness of Taoist companions that I have always adhered to was overturned by the Empress herself. In this case, let the Empress write another one. In this way, I can see 2 books written by the Empress. Since the theory of the uselessness of Taoist companions, the Empress has never written any books again. If I can see another book, how exciting it will be. Write another book? What kind of book do you want me to publish? This weird question made Chu Qingyu stunned for a moment. As if he had an idea, a disciple soon answered. Of course, it is to publish another book about the concept of love, such as how the Empress now views love, And what impact does love have on cultivation? The title of the book is The Theory of the Usefulness of Taoist Companions is very good. Chu Qingyu. I am not stupid, can I write two completely different books to refute myself? Shaking her head, she quickly and firmly rejected the proposal. After pondering for a moment, she coughed and said, I think that what you said about writing another book, The Usefulness of Taoist Companions, is not very meaningful. However, if you really want to read it, I can write a different book in my spare time with the theme of love. What does the Empress want to write? Although the proposal was rejected, the female disciples were extremely excited when they heard that Chu Qingyu was actually planning to write a book. After all, in their hearts, the height of the Empress, no matter what she wrote, it would definitely become a widely circulated masterpiece. Just hearing Chu Qingyu's words, they couldn't wait to read it. This emperor wants to write a love diary to record every bit of love, in order to awaken the world, especially the monks' feelings for love. How about it? Hearing that the call was so high, Chu Qingyu also tried to say, ah. However, the air suddenly fell silent. This, Empress, you better not write it? After a while, most of the female disciples looked at each other and agreed, shaking their heads like drums. Huh? Why can't this name work? The female disciples showed such a strong contrast that Chu Qingyu couldn't help but show a trace of doubt. Of course. Some of the female disciples didn't want to answer, but in the end, they still told their actual feelings with a sad face. If Empress really writes a love diary, it's not to awaken the world's cultivators' understanding of love. That's clearly a naked show of affection. That's right, as long as it's a book written by the Empress, I will definitely want to read it with my own eyes. But if the Empress writes that book, I will be fed to death just by eating dog food. Just now, after witnessing how terrible the Empress's show of affection was, these Emetian disciples who have been single for many years naturally dared not agree to such a thing. Looking at the pitiful appearance of those tearful eyes, Chu Qingyu couldn't help but burst out laughing. So that's how it is, you disciples are really. Forget it, let it go, I won't write anything. As long as what happened today can make you understand something. Don't worry, Queen, we will definitely reflect on what happened today in our hearts. The disciples of Mount Ime breathed a sigh of relief and bowed respectfully. On the hillside, the red and fiery Jweking flowers bloomed and swayed gently with the wind. The sunset glowed down, the bright red and Jweking flowers set off each other, and this beautiful scenery made everyone feel warm in their hearts. The overall situation has been decided, and Chu Qingyu and Nai Chen seem to be planning to leave. But a female disciple hurriedly caught up and came to Nai Chen's side. Brother Nai, although the Empress has made me and my sisters understand a lot about love, but I still want to remind you of a very important thing. Recently, you'd better pay attention to your safety and don't go out casually. What do you mean? Well, mainly in addition to Mount Ime, the followers of the Empress's single concept are much more powerful than imagined. Not only that, although no one dared to bring it up before, there are actually countless cultivators in the world who admire the Empress. So, I'm afraid that Brother Nai will be careless, cough cough. Nai Chen. It seems that I have enough rivals in love. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 435. The Empress is back. Senior Brother Nai, is back too. Tianyuan Palace, looking at the two ethereal figures approaching from the horizon, the eyes of all the disciples were instantly attracted. But soon, his pupils couldn't help but shrink. Why does it feel like the Empress is so happy? More than just happy? I have never seen the Empress in such a good mood since entering Tianyuan Palace. They clearly saw Chu Qingyu walking lightly on her lotus steps into the air. The blue phoenix skirt flutters with the beautiful shadows, like flying butterflies. More importantly, Chu Qingyu's steps were extremely brisk and she seemed to be in a good mood. Even the steps he walked down were like dancing, drawing a graceful arc. And as she walked, the elegant skirt danced gently, and the cool colors swayed beautifully. Seeing Nai Chen on the side, the disciples already knew that the Empress was out on a date just now. But he didn't expect that the Empress would be in such a good mood after the date. It is enough to show how satisfied the Empress is with this date, and is even, somewhat immersed in it. Oh, my heart hurts so much. Me too. In the past, the Empress sat in the main hall and rarely left the hall. Now the Empress has daily appointments and even sprinkles a handful of super concentrated dog food from time to time. The disciples had tears in their eyes and no longer knew how they could survive this day of daily displays of affection. No wonder the flower saint has not dared to come to the Empress recently. No one else would be able to eat so much dog food. Dudu, dudu. Among the many eyes, Chu Qingyu passed by the disciples with brisk steps. He seemed to be in a very good mood and was humming a very pleasant ditty. What do these disciples look like? After the Empress walked by, he noticed the gazes of the disciples and several supreme elders, and Nai Chen couldn't help but feel a chill in his back. The eyes of this group of people were as sharp as swords, as if they wanted to pounce on them like evil wolves. You know, I used to have a highly respected position in the sect, but the change in the attitude of these disciples is really big. That feeling is like being in a school, where all the boys in the class are thinking about the very cold and untouchable goddess that you discuss with you on weekdays. But one day he publicly announced that he was in love with you, and even walked on the road in front of everyone to show off his love. Such lethality is simply epic. Nai Chen couldn't help but look away in embarrassment. Sure enough, as the female disciple from Mount Imei said, she now has countless love rivals in the world. Even if you reach the realm of the great emperor, you still have to be careful. Under the sharp gazes, Nai Chen returned to the room. Ding, congratulations to the host for successfully changing the attitudes of the female disciples in Mount Imei by showing affection to the Empress. It saves a lot of love concepts and is expected to create at least 1,000 more lives in Lanchuan continent. Saving one life is better than building a 7-level pagoda. The host actually saved 1,000 lives? This is really an act of great kindness. System reward: open Tianyun Temple's mountain spiritual veins, and the host's understanding will be greatly improved. Create at least 1,000 more little lives? This sudden reward made Nai Chen stunned for a long time. Unexpectedly, those Emishan disciples who are quite opposed to love would be so fertile in the future. It's a little sudden for me, a kind person, to deserve this. But, open the spiritual veins. Just when Nai Chen was confused, His Highness Tianyun's mountain range suddenly trembled. A crack spread, splitting half of the mountain range in an instant. What happened? Near Tianyun Hall, many disciples also felt the tremor at the same time. Tianyun Palace was built on strong spiritual veins. The spiritual energy here is extremely abundant, and the mountains are like iron and stone, unshakable. Even in the face of the great emperor's attack, the mountains never suffered any damage. What happened that could actually cause a gap to open in the mountains? Is there an enemy attack? To be able to cause such terrible destructive power, I am afraid that at least the emperor is strong. The empress must be informed of this matter quickly. Even the elders next to him looked panicked and quickly wanted to leave. But at this moment, within the cracks spreading on the ground, majestic spiritual energy suddenly burst out. Spiritual energy soared into the sky and quickly spread to all directions of Tianyun Palace. All the disciples turned pale in astonishment and hurriedly wanted to retreat to avoid the area shrouded in thick fog. But when they were unable to retreat and were already enveloped in the spiritual mist, they suddenly realized that this mist was completely different from what they had imagined. This mist is spiritual energy, and it is extremely pure. It is even richer than the one on the top of the mountain. Where do these spiritual energies come from? The disciples who didn't know that there were still spiritual veins in the mountains of Tianyun Palace were all surprised. And I was extremely surprised to find that the benefits brought by this spiritual energy were extremely terrifying. Being in it, they can even improve their cultivation at a speed several times faster than before. Even the impurities in their bodies are washed and purified in the spiritual energy. They had no idea what was happening. In their surprise, many people had even begun to sit cross-legged, using this majestic spiritual energy to cleanse their bodies and improve their cultivation. As the spiritual energy filled the air, Nai Chen, who was sitting alone in the house, also closed his eyes and concentrated his mind. After reaching the realm of the great emperor, he gradually realized that the communication between himself and the world seemed to be constantly strengthening. With one breath, he seemed to move with the wind. Even with his eyes closed, he could clearly perceive everything around him. Whether it was a flower or a grass, a falling leaf, or even dust suspended in the air, the scene could be clearly imprinted in Nai Chen's eyes. As Nai Chen focused his attention, the pure spiritual energy around him seemed to be attracted. Accompanied by the whirlwind, it continuously gathered towards the wind outlet centered on him. Not only did the spiritual energy gather more and more, it seemed to become more pure in the process of continuous screening. The extremely pure spiritual energy turned into an extremely pure liquid, which was slowly absorbed by Nai Chen's skin. And the space around him also experienced a violent shock in this rolling sense of oppression. Huh! In an instant, a strong force broke out in Nai Chen's body. The power swept across, directly shattering the surrounding spiritual energy, and even the oppressive feeling that was floating in the air just now disappeared in an instant. Everything seemed to have returned to peace and quiet. The sudden scene just now was also fleeting. Nai Chen slowly opened his eyes. In the moment just now, his cultivation level actually broke through to the middle stage of the cauldron transformation realm at a terrifying speed. But even though the breakthrough was so fast, Nai Chen frowned at this moment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 436. Strange. It should be a very good thing to reach a higher realm not long after breaking through to the great emperor realm. But looking inward, Nai Chen frowned slightly. Because he clearly felt the emptiness of the spiritual energy in his body. At the same time, with the help of comprehension and the vast spiritual energy, although he broke through to the middle stage of the waiting realm, Nai Chen could feel that his spiritual energy was extremely chaotic at the moment. Although the spiritual power has improved, it brings the difference between emptiness and extremely unstable realm. This feeling is completely different from the previous step-by-step, rock-solid progress. Not only that, Nai Chen also felt a little strange at the same time. Before breaking through the great emperor realm, each realm seemed to have a clear goal and barrier in front of him. For example, the threshold from the Pi High realm to the waiting realm. Although it is extremely difficult to cross the domain, his goal is very clear. He knows deeply that as long as he can break through that barrier, he can get further improvement. So although the road to the great emperor realm is long, under the clear goal, his progress speed is extremely terrifying. But now, Nai Chen suddenly felt that the road ahead of breaking through the cauldron and ascending to the realm of calamity seemed to be shrouded in a fog. It was not a problem of breaking through the difficulty, but that he simply did not know where to go. Is this the reason why no emperor has been born in the entire Lanchuan continent for thousands of years? Nai Chen could not help but fall into deep thought. His comprehension had obviously been repeatedly improved, and even those ancient books that no one could comprehend could be understood at a glance. But for this point, he pondered for a full half an hour and could not think of any clues at all. Seeing time flying, Nai Chen finally gave up forcing himself to think. Suddenly remembering the system of the best tool man, he called the system directly. By the way, system, do you know what is wrong with my current practice? Why do I feel weird? Ding, the system is analyzing. The host's current practice does have problems. Oh? What's the problem? Unexpectedly, the system could even analyze this, and Nai Chen couldn't help but ask curiously. The host has been making rapid progress in cultivation. In addition to relying on his physique and the system, the host's own understanding and efforts are also extremely important. But to break through the realm of calamity, it is far more than just a simple improvement in cultivation. Those who can cross the realm of calamity have transcended the continent and can ascend to the immortal world. To reach this state, it is not only necessary to break through the constraints of cultivation and heaven and earth. More importantly, the mind must also be perfected. Perfect the mind. Yes, this means that the host needs to put an end to all worries and get rid of all demons. And clear all the fog in front of him, perfect the host's deepest desire to the extreme, so that he can enter the room and achieve perfection. The system's answer surprised Nai Chen. It seems that breaking through the realm of calamity is indeed many times more difficult than imagined. The words perfection and perfection sound simple, but the difficulty is enough to discourage almost everyone. It is so difficult for anything born from heaven and earth to reach the state of impeccability, not to mention achieving the ultimate in what one cares about. Wait, what one cares about? Thinking of this, Nai Chen was suddenly stunned. Everyone's concerns are naturally different. Some people hold their sons to the sky and fight against the way of heaven, while others accompany their loved ones until the end of their lives before fulfilling their worldly wishes and entering the final realm of life. Then the love between me and the empress is sweet enough, isn't it perfect? Nai Chen was slightly stunned. The host must have known the answer in his heart. Just then, the voice of the system came. The mechanical voice seemed to penetrate into Nai Chen's heart. True perfection. With a thought in his heart, when he raised his head again, Nai Chen suddenly found that the scene in front of him was completely different. In front of him was a vast universe. There are countless planets in the universe. Some planets are full of cherry blossoms, with countless cherry red petals floating in the sky all year round. Some planets are vast oceans, with thousands of beautiful creatures in the sea, even those that Lanchuan continent has never seen. There are also worlds filled with rainbow light, and colorful auroras illuminate the sky, with gorgeous beauty, beautiful beyond words. These small worlds are the worlds that the system rewards can be used to propose to the Empress. According to the regulations of the task reward, Nai Chen can only choose one world as the place to propose. But in the end, the world that Nai Chen chose was not any planet, but the vast universe itself. The galaxy flows slowly. Looking down, the countless planets have their own gorgeous scenery, and the boundless universe is so beautiful that people can't help but indulge in it, as if they are out of the matter and don't want to have any complicated thoughts. And this is the place Nai Chen chose to propose. You mean? Nai Chen's eyes paused for a while. The host should already know what this system means. Haha, your system is really something. Recalling the scene when the letter of war turned into a love letter, Nai Chen couldn't help but smile. The image of the Empress reappeared in his mind, and after a moment, Nai Chen finally nodded. And his expression was very serious. Nai Chen naturally knew the true meaning of the system prompt. Although the love between him and the Empress was the sweetest in the world, it did not reach the most perfect perfection after all. Although the Empress had announced her love to the world, there was nothing else. With a slight smile on his lips, Nai Chen looked out the window, his eyes already full of decisive determination. He must marry the Empress in front of all the cultivators in the world and hold a perfect wedding. Only in this way can he be worthy of himself and the Empress. Host has made up his mind. For such a major matter, the system obviously did not expect Nai Chen to make such a quick decision. Nonsense, of course. This time, Nai Chen answered very decisively. Such a quick decision was not hasty, but he had been thinking silently in his heart. After putting away the small world that encompassed countless planets, Nai Chen stood up, already dignified and full of fighting spirit. With this, Do I still have to worry about the proposal? Not only the wedding, I also want to give the Empress the most perfect proposal. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 437. Strange, the sky outside. While thinking about the proposal, Nai Chen suddenly noticed that the sky outside had changed. Originally, the sun was rising, the sky was blue, and the sky was almost cloudless, but now it turned into a dark mass. Even the sky gradually darkened, and the heavy clouds continued to surge towards the direction of Tianyun Hall. In the sky, strands of raindrops had begun to float. And the rain was still increasing as time went by. The weather above Tianyun Hall was actually affected, and this situation was obviously a little wrong. Nai Chen stopped thinking, stood up and pushed the door out. Sure enough, the sky outside was also covered by dark clouds. At this moment, all the disciples of Tianyun Hall also gathered outside the hall, looking up at the sky in astonishment. I saw a dark mass of dark clouds floating above the dark clouds in the distance. There were shrimp soldiers and crab generals, navy officers wearing armor, and dragons flying above the clouds in the form of dragons. The dragons and seamen of the West Sea Dragon Palace were the ones who caused the heavy rain and slowly approached. I am Aana, the great elder of the West Sea Dragon Palace. I have come to pay my respects to the Empress. Please forgive me for coming so suddenly. As if noticing the sensation caused by the situation, Aana hurriedly stood up in front of the navy officers of the West Sea Dragon Palace and bowed respectfully in the direction of the Tianyun Palace. Following his actions, many sea tribes, even the sea beasts that had not transformed into human form, also bowed solemnly with awe on their faces. Obviously, the majesty of the Empress in the hearts of these sea tribes has become unshakable. After all, when Chu Qingyu entered the Dragon Palace, the cold majesty and the majestic imperial power still left a big psychological shadow in the hearts of many dragon tribes. Even if they came with a large army, no dragon dared to show disrespect. Well, in that case, I will not hold you responsible for causing the change in the celestial phenomena for the time being. Tell me, what are you doing here? Chu Qingyu's cold voice came out. Then, the beautiful and flawless figure slowly walked out of the Tianyun Palace. Even though her stunning appearance was enough to make anyone's heart beat, these usually rough sea creatures lowered their heads deeply, and no one dared to watch without permission. Because Aana had issued a death order long before coming to the Tianyun Palace. Anyone who disrespects the Empress, even if he observes the Empress without permission, will have his eyes removed and be punished with the greatest punishment after returning. It is enough to see how much the majestic West Sea Dragon Palace now respects the Empress. Your Highness, we came to the Sky Cloud Palace to take the Dragon King Aolan back to the Dragon Palace. The one-year contract has expired. According to the agreement, the pet contract signed between the Dragon King and Nai Chen has expired. From now on, Nai Chen will no longer interfere with our Dragon King's actions, and Aolan will return to the Dragon Palace and sit back on the throne of the Dragon King. Aana immediately answered solemnly, his voice and gestures were all in the lowest posture, without any disrespectful thoughts. Contract. Although the attitude of Aana and the West Sea Dragon Palace was indeed good, Chu Qingyu frowned slightly when she heard this. Aolan had been in the Sky Cloud Palace for a while. Although there were some small misunderstandings in the middle, Chu Qingyu had a good impression of Aolan. For so long, she also acquiesced to the existence of this silly little dragon. Until today, the scene of working hard with Aolan and eating a full 10 golden carp is still vivid in my mind. But now, Chu Qingyu's eyes seemed to soften a bit, and she turned her head and looked at Nai Chen, who had just walked out of the hall. Why are they here? At this moment, Aolan, who was originally playing with the female disciples of Tianyun Hall, also noticed the situation in the sky. At this moment, she seemed a little overwhelmed. With a blank mind, Aolan, who didn't know what to do, actually ran to Nai-chan's side at the first time, grabbing his trouser legs with her little hands, as if seeking help. Looking at Aolan, who looked a little pitiful, Nai-chan just reacted. Yes, in the blink of an eye, a year has passed. Now, the pet contract with Aolan has reached its expiration date. Just looking at Aolan, who was still sticking to him, as if waiting for him to come up with ideas, Nai-chen couldn't help but smile. Unexpectedly, after a year, Aolan was still the same. Although her current strength is enough to crush any dragon in the Dragon Palace, and now the Dragon Palace army is coming to welcome her back to the throne of the Dragon King, Aolan is still a little scared. No, it doesn't seem that she is very scared. Nai-chen suddenly noticed that Aolan, who was clinging to him, lowered her head and was obviously at a loss. But there was no fear on her face. What really made her do this was not fear, but it seemed that she was a little hesitant and didn't know what to do. What should I do? At this moment, Aolan finally spoke. She looked up at Nai-chen, and her eyes quickly dodged, as if she was hesitant and had no idea what to do next. Looking back, from the time the contract was just signed until such a long time had passed, Aolan seemed to have said proudly that when the one-year deadline was up, she could return to the Dragon Palace and take the much-admired position of Dragon King. But unexpectedly, when it really came to this moment, she showed something completely different from what she had said before. This time, where was the smug self-confidence? You silly little dragon, why haven't you made any progress in such a long time? Since the contract has expired, all the decisions are in your hands. Whether it is returning to the Dragon Palace or doing something else, you can decide for yourself. Time passed too quickly, and Nai-chen did not expect that this day would come so suddenly. Although he was indeed a little reluctant, he still smiled and answered, touching Aoian's little head. After all, the contract time has expired, and the right to come and go freely is all in Aoian's hands. I judge for myself. Aolan was slightly stunned for a while. As the dragon with the purest blood in the entire dragon clan, she naturally has the responsibility to assume the position of Dragon King. But what should I do? It has been a whole year since a Dragon King sat in the seat of the West Sea Dragon Palace. Dragon King, please come back. Dragon King, you have a burden that is completely different from that of humans. At this moment, the shouts of the dragons rang out. Aolan felt that her mind was in a mess and she could no longer think normally as usual. For some reason, she was hesitant and nodded in a mess. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 438. There cannot be a Dragon King in the Dragon Palace. If that's the case, then I will go back. Pursing his lips slightly, hesitatingly, Aolan finally answered. That's great, the Dragon King actually agreed. The air was silent for a while. Upon hearing these words, many dragons above the clouds suddenly cheered. The leader, Great Elder Aona, was also obviously excited. Originally, I was worried that Aolan would stay in Tianyun Palace for too long and might even refuse to return to Dragon Palace. Unexpectedly, Aolan would agree so quickly. Congratulations to the Dragon King for returning to the West Sea. Great, our Dragon King is back. In the sky, many dragons couldn't help but burst into cheers of joy, obviously extremely excited. Now, all the Dragon Kings of the remaining 3 sea areas have been defeated by Nai-chen and the Empress, and have been replaced by new Dragon Kings who are extremely weak. With Aoian's current bloodline and strength, once he can return to the Dragon Palace, he will definitely be able to lead the West Sea Dragon Palace to its peak. It won't be long before he crushes the other 3 Dragon Palaces and becomes the leader of the world. It's simply a piece of cake. the West Sea Dragon Palace is really going to be revitalized. However, among the cheers of many dragon clans, the people in Tianyuan Palace clearly showed some regret. Although Aolan came to Tianyuan Palace for only 1 year. But this cute little dragon girl brought a lot of joy, and won the love of almost everyone with her cute character. The female disciples of Tianyuan Palace often took the time to tease Aolan whenever they had free time, and they had long regarded her as a close friend. The news that Aolan was suddenly leaving was obviously a little sudden. If Aolan returns to the Dragon Palace, even because of his status, it may be difficult for him to come to Tianyuan Palace again. Even Chu Qingyu's expression changed slightly, and a trace of regret appeared on Leng Ao's cheek. A promise has been made, and as an empress, it is naturally impossible for her to break her promise. In this case, I will not stop you. If Aolan wants to return to the West Sea Dragon Palace and take up the position of Dragon King again, he can just follow you and leave. With a slight sigh, Chu Qingyu looked at the dragons in the sky. Thank you, Empress. After receiving Chu Qingyu's agreement, Aona breathed a long sigh of relief, feeling so happy that he even had a smile on his face. Aolan did not refuse, and the Empress nodded in agreement. In this way, there will be no more accidents. We sincerely welcome the Dragon King back to the Dragon Palace. Please come back with us. Aona took a step forward excitedly, and the other dragons all bowed to welcome him ecstatically. But Aolan, who had been boasting for a long time that one day he would return to the Dragon Palace and ascend to the position of Dragon King, did not show the slightest joy on his face. On the contrary, it was full of entanglements. As if hesitant, Aolan looked at Nai Chen and then at the many dragons who came forward respectfully. Facing Aona's invitation, she gently shook her head. I don't know what to do now. On the way back to Dragon Palace, let Nai Chen go back with me first. As she said that, she couldn't help but tighten her little hand on Nai Chen's trouser leg, and her expression showed a bit of sadness. This is against the rules. You and fellow deist Nai have terminated the pet contract. As a human being, he should have no right to enter the Dragon Palace without permission. Aona immediately looked embarrassed, obviously unwilling to let Nai Chen enter the Dragon Palace. But soon, he noticed the hesitation and entanglement in Aoian's expression. After wandering for a moment, Aona gritted his teeth, fearing that Aolan would regret it. He did not dare to delay any longer, so he had to make up his mind and said, well, in that case, let Nai Chen accompany you for once. After hearing the answer, Aolan nodded. Aolan looked up at Nai Chen and felt the body temperature coming from beside him. At this moment, Aolan actually felt so at ease. However, even though she managed to calm down, she felt her mind was in chaos. From the very beginning when these dragons appeared, it was completely impossible to make a calm judgment. Before today, whenever he recalled that the time for the contract was approaching, Aolan would fall into deep thought. He was wondering whether to return to the Dragon Palace. Many times, when talking to others, Mingming seemed to proudly emphasize that she would return to the position of Dragon King in a year, but whenever she thought of this question, Aolan could not come up with an answer anyway. Therefore, she had no choice but to suppress the sudden thoughts again and again, trying not to think about any issues about a year later. But as time passed slowly, Aolan, who had always remained cheerful and happy and did not want to think about this problem, did not realize that this day would come so suddenly. She didn't want to really face this day, but the dragons in the Dragon Palace were looking forward to it day and night. Finally, they waited for this day and rushed to Tianyuan Palace as soon as possible. This sudden situation didn't even leave her any room to react. Sticking next to Nai Chen, Aolan walked towards the clouds step by step. One person and one dragon slowly came to the clouds formed by the dragons swallowing the clouds and spitting mist. Welcome the Dragon King back to the Dragon Palace. The excited cheers were completely inconsistent with Aoian's somewhat lonely expression. But what the dragon and sea tribes obviously don't care about is whether Aolan is happy. What they care about is that as long as Aolan can return to the Dragon Palace, it is enough. Thank you, Queen, we will take our leave now. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 439. Roar. The roars of dragons echoed in the sky, and the mighty army of the Dragon Palace on the clouds was obviously excited about Aoian's return. The dragon bodies that kept shuttling through the clouds and the majestic roars made many cultivators along the way look up at the sky in astonishment. What happened? I heard that the Dragon King of the West Sea is returning to the Dragon Palace. Shouldn't the Dragon King be in the Dragon Palace? What's so strange about this? What's so strange about this? You probably don't know that Aolan, the Dragon King of the West Sea Dragon Palace, has been Nichen's pet for the past year. More importantly, it is rumored that Aoian's dragon blood seems to be the purest in 1,000 years. There is even news from the top of the dragon clan that the purity of Aoian's ancestral blood is even comparable to that of the ancient dragon clan. Comparable to the ancient dragon clan. This sentence immediately caused a lot of astonishment. After all, almost everyone knows what the word ancient means. If the rumors are true, then Aoian's strength will be extremely terrifying. Ancient Dragon Clan. No wonder the Dragon Palace army is so excited, this is really too terrifying. Looking at the sky in the distance, many cultivators who heard this were all a little stunned. The big move of the West Sea Dragon Palace has shocked the world and attracted the attention of countless sects. It is enough to see how much the West Sea Dragon Palace values Aoian's return. And, very proud to show off. If Aolan can really return to the Dragon Palace, the improvement of the West Sea Dragon Palace will be a leap forward. The dragons in the other 3 seas looked at the scene in front of them, and they showed off far more than humans. At this moment, the clouds carrying the Dragon Palace army have been floating darkly over the sea area of the West Sea. Accompanied by the dragon roar, dragon bodies sank into the sea with great joy. The sight of thousands of huge dragon bodies entering the sea was like a series of golden pillars sinking into the sea. The bodies that surged into the sea instantly stirred up violent waves, and the waves surged and undulated, as if they had the power to swallow up the mountains and rivers. The scenery was enough to be described as spectacular. Welcome the Dragon King back to the Dragon Palace. The shrimp soldiers and crab generals under the sea surfaced one after another, bowing respectfully. The dragons surged, and the 4 seas came to pay homage. In the turbulent waves, the dragons above the clouds, as well as Nichen and Aolan, also slowly sank into the water and headed towards the deep sea. As the dragon balls in the Dragon Palace bloomed with a strange color, they almost illuminated the surrounding sea area within 100 miles. When the scene under the sea appeared, the scene in front of him was obviously more magnificent. In the sea, hundreds of millions of creatures all gathered in the direction where Aolan entered the water. Turtles, fish, and even various arthropods in the sea, as well as indescribable strange species. Some looked up respectfully, while others stayed in place in awe. Although they could not transform into human form, their incomparable respect was clearly expressed. The dazzling light reflected the sea water, and the spectacular scene around them was beyond description. Countless awe-inspiring sea creatures, like a huge umbrella, guarded Aolan firmly in it. This was their Dragon King, and they always looked up to him in awe. The arrival of Aolan was like a monarch ascending the throne, which could attract the admiration and fear of trillions of people. Although the sea was silent, every creature was expressing their awe in their own form. Not only because Aolan was the Dragon King, but more importantly, the blood she possessed was a unique and pure ancestral blood. Under the leadership of such blood, the Dragon Clan will surely be able to prosper. Aoian's return is destined to herald the rise of the Dragon Palace in the West Sea. The Dragon Palace is right in front of us, the huge clouds dissipate, and the Dragon Palace's troops land on the rocks and soil hundreds of thousands of meters below the sea. Aoian's figure also slowly fell. Dragon King, all the dragons who have disrespected you or participated in the rebellion out of dissatisfaction have been detained in the deep-sea prison awaiting their fate. The dragons who are now working in the Dragon Palace are all your devout followers. I am willing to swear allegiance to you until death, and even swear a blood oath that as long as I don't want to die, I will never make any rebellious moves. The old dragon Aena also came to Aolan at this time and said very respectfully, "So Dragon King, please." As his voice fell, a long road opened in front of Aolan. The road led directly to the Dragon Palace, and along the way, steel pillars engraved with dragon shapes rose up. On each dragon-patterned iron pillar, there is a dragon ball quietly placed, which is full of breath and emits crystal light. The road is paved with dragon bones, and there are hundreds of dragon ball pillars on both sides. This road is the highest welcoming etiquette in the Dragon Palace. Every step you take, the dragon ball emits a dazzling light, and it seems that the roar of a dragon echoes in the sea. It seems that thousands of dragons are worshipping, waiting here, and waiting in awe for the welcoming person to walk through this road. When Aolan succeeded to the throne of Dragon King, her greatest wish was to be respected like this one day. But at this moment, looking at everything in front of her, there was no joy on her face. But Aolan could not help but clench her fists as she sensed the surroundings. She knew that there was no way out for her in the current situation. Amidst the expectant and awed gazes, Aolan had no choice but to slowly step onto the road. However, her steps were a little stiff. As if they were afraid that Aolan would go back on his word, the dragons did not stop Nai-Chen and Aolan from walking together. The man and the dragon were very close, walking slowly on this long road. The dragon balls shone one after another, and the mighty dragon power was ethereal in the Dragon Palace. Although Aoian's steps were very slow, it didn't take long for all the 100 dragon balls to shine, symbolizing that she had walked the entire road. In front of her was the Dragon King's throne made of the dragon bones of the ancient dragons. On the seat, pure dragon blood was still flowing, and the golden dragon blood seemed to be constantly calling the blood in Aoian's body. The position of Dragon King was what countless dragons longed for, and it was also what Aolan had dreamed of. But at this moment, a trace of sadness was revealed in her wandering eyes. If she took one more step forward, she would be able to sit back on that seat. But under the gaze of countless dragons and sea creatures, Aoian's steps towards the throne came to an abrupt halt. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 440. Why did you stop suddenly? Didn't you always want to go back to that seat? Nai-Chen was slightly surprised by Aoian's sudden stop. Sending Aolan back to the Dragon Palace was like sending a daughter to marry. Although he was somewhat relieved, he was more reluctant to let her go. I don't know. Aoian's voice was actually trembling with tears at this moment. She shook her head gently, and her eyes clearly revealed a sense of reluctance and even a trace of regret. I felt that the contract date was approaching a long time ago. I don't know why, but every time I see the day approaching, I always feel a little uncomfortable in my heart. So a long time ago, I started to deliberately stop looking at the calendar and just wanted to spend it in peace. But I didn't expect that this day would come so soon. Nai-Chen looked down and saw that Aoian's hair with a little light blue at the end became a little messy because she leaned on him just now. Now he is in front of many sea creatures who believe in her. Aolan seemed to be trying her best to control her emotions, but she still couldn't suppress the slight trembling of her petite body. At the same time, her nervous little fists clenched inadvertently. Although he didn't know what Aolan was thinking at the moment, Nai-Chen could see it clearly. Aoian's desire for the position of Dragon King seemed far less than her sadness at the moment. She was obviously still struggling whether to sit on the position of Dragon King because of the burden she was carrying and the expectations of countless dragons and sea tribes. But it was obvious that Aoian's emotions at the moment seemed to be more like resistance to the Dragon Palace. At this moment, Nai Chen couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Although he knew that Aolan had already had a different attachment to Tianyun Palace in this year. But he didn't expect that the little dragon who had been looking forward to the one-year deadline day and night when signing the contract would be so hesitant in front of the position of Dragon King at this moment. Even, he showed a completely different resistance from what he said before. In this year, Aolan seems to have changed a lot. This thought suddenly came to Nai Chen's mind. Looking at Aolan, he had a hint of tenderness in his expression, and gently stroked her body. No matter what you want to do, the real choice is in your hands. You don't need to hesitate, just follow the choice in your heart. As for other things, I will help you solve them. After Nai Chen finished speaking, he instantly caused an uproar among the dragons. They never thought that Aolan would stop at this step, and more importantly, this human dared to say such a thing. Nai Chen. Aolan is the Dragon King of our West Sea Dragon Palace, and also the dragon with the purest blood since ancient times. She not only carries the burden of the Dragon King, but also the responsibility of reproduction. No matter what, Aolan must stay in the Dragon Palace and return to the position of Dragon King. These things are all the affairs of our Dragon Palace. As a human, you should not interfere without authorization. Otherwise, even if we try our best, we will definitely kill you here. The dragons were completely furious. At the Tianyun Palace conference held by the Empress, they had witnessed Nai Chen's strength rising to the level of the Great Emperor. The Great Emperor of the human race was extremely powerful. They naturally had a great fear of Nai Chen in their hearts. But even so, once it came to the issue of taking Aolan away, the dragons were obviously furious. If it was anything else, they could put down their attitude and avoid conflicts with the great emperor of the human race. But when it came to Aolan, they would never let Nai Chen take her away. Since he had entered the West Sea Dragon Palace, Aolan must become the Dragon King and not think about leaving again. That's right, a mere human dares to make a decision for the Dragon King of our Dragon King. Even though they were afraid of Nai Chen in their hearts, at this moment, many dragons no longer concealed their anger. Now that Nai Chen was in the deep sea, even if he was a great emperor, he had no advantage of time and place. With the blessing of numbers and the formation in the Dragon Palace, they did not think they would be unable to deal with Nai Chen. If Nai Chen still dared to take Aolan away, they were even ready to rush forward at any time, attack in groups, and kill Nai Chen here as quickly as possible. Roar. The majestic dragon roar echoed near the Dragon Palace, and countless huge dragon bodies swam in the sea, looking at Nai Chen angrily. Countless huge shadows almost enveloped the Dragon Palace. It seemed that they wanted to surround Nai Chen and intimidate him. However, the dragon's ideas did not seem to work. Even in the face of such a strong murderous battle, Nai Chen did not show any fear. Instead, he completely violated what the old dragons said, stroked Aoian's head, and smiled calmly. Don't worry, I'm here, you just need to do what you want. After speaking, Nai Chen raised his head again. The eyes suddenly burst into golden light, and mysterious golden lines with a majestic sense of oppression appeared on Nai Chen's body. The light emitted from his eyes looked directly at the countless dragon bodies surging in all directions. The golden light swept across, illuminating the dark sea as bright as day. Not only that, all the surging dragon bodies felt an extremely terrifying sense of oppression at the same time. It was Nai Chen who was surrounded at the moment, but they couldn't help but feel their bodies tremble. It was as if the gaze was as sharp as the slash of thousands of blades. The whole sea seemed to fall into deathly silence in an instant. At this moment, no dragon dared to make any provocative moves. While the gaze was filled with anger, there was also a trace of fear that could not be concealed. Aolan seemed to be in deep entanglement at this moment, but when she raised her head inadvertently, she found the strangeness of the dragons. Nai Chen was not the Dragon King, but at this moment, just a look made the four seas afraid, and countless dragons retreated in shock. Satisfied with the admiration of the sea people in the small dragon palace, and even had to make sacrifices for the reproduction of the dragon bloodline. Is this kind of life really what you want? In an instant, Ao Ian's confused heart seemed to be unblocked in an instant. The eyes that had been hesitating and even a little sad also became firm in an instant. She suddenly looked at Nai Chen, her eyes clearly showing her complete determination. Even though the dragons and sea creatures around the dragon palace kept making noises, trying to change her mind, Aolan still did not waver. I have made up my mind. Staring at Nai Chen, Aolan suddenly nodded seriously. Oh? What do you think? Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 441. I will also protect the West Sea as the Dragon King, and I will also devote my strength to protecting and strengthening the West Sea. But I will never stay in the Dragon Palace and sit on this position of the Dragon King that can only be used as a restraint. The pet beast contract, even if I don't sign it, I still hope to continue it. It can be 1 year, 2 years, or, forever. Aolan looked at Nai Chen with clear eyes. She also felt a little ashamed after saying that she would sign a permanent contract with a pet beast. But what can be seen is that Ao Ian's attitude this time is extremely determined, and there is not even the slightest hesitation in his expression. This feeling of decisiveness was something she had never experienced before. How is that possible? However, these words stirred up waves like a stone. Whether it's the dragons surging in the sea, or the sea aquatics floating around solemnly. All intelligent people were stunned at the same time. Aona was shocked when he heard this and tried to stop him. Absolutely not. All the dragon kings in the past dynasties have to sit in the dragon palace, so how can there ever be a dragon king who wanders around the world every day and becomes a pet beast of mankind? What's more, your bloodline is pure, which has been extremely rare for thousands of years. If the reproduction task is not completed when the bloodline is at its best, wouldn't the dragon clan suffer heavy losses? Even the ancestors who hold the position of dragon king will not agree. Following what the dragons said, a powerful dragon power emitted from the dragon king's position at this moment. The strong dragon power floated in all directions, and a majestic dragon roar that was completely different from any other dragon roared out from the throne. Immediately afterwards, the golden dragon blood flowing on the throne of the Dragon King slowly exuded dragon power and condensed into the appearance of a golden dragon. The virtual image floated above the throne, exuding an extremely mysterious, ancient, majestic sense of oppression. This sense of oppression far exceeds that of any dragon clan except the Dragon Palace. When the virtual image of the golden dragon appeared, the elders of the Dragon Clan who knew a lot about the history of the Dragon Clan opened their eyes wide at the same time. There was even a hint of excitement and awe in his eyes. Because the shadow that appeared on the throne of the Dragon King was an extremely supreme existence. Aosing, the guardian envoy of the Dragon Clan in ancient times. Aosing was originally one of the most powerful dragon elders in ancient times. Its terrifying strength can even easily suppress the powerful emperors of the human race. It is feared by all races. It is even known as the most terrifying dragon in the world under the Dragon King. But as the ancient spiritual energy continued to pass away, Aosing noticed the decline of the Dragon Clan. He realized that if this rate was maintained, the purity of dragon blood might drop significantly. For the Dragon Clan, which relies heavily on bloodline purity, such a change is tantamount to a devastating blow. In order to save the future Dragon Clan from danger, Aosing, who was almost in its prime, actually made a crazy move. Using his own dragon bones as material, dragon blood as a guide, and the remaining soul sealed in it, he made a Dragon King's throne. Since then, Aocene has suffered heavy losses and has been unable to recover. But the dragon chair he made turned into a throne, guarding the Dragon Kings of the past generations. Ancestor Aocene is the only remaining ancient remnant soul. Even if you want to leave, you need to get his consent first. Yes, Senior Aocene has guarded the Dragon Clan for generations and made judgments for the Dragon Kings of the past generations. As long as the strength cannot catch up with the previous ancestors, even the Dragon King must obey the orders of the Aocene ancestors. As if they saw a savior, the elders of the Dragon Clan suddenly shouted sharply at Aolan. At the same time, the golden dragon virtual image transformed by the Dragon King's seat seemed to be awakened. The light shines brightly, and the already majestic dragon body becomes even more dazzling and awe-inspiring. The golden dragon head lowered and looked at Aoian's petite body at his feet. Just by breathing out the dragon's breath, the virtual image formed by Aocene's remnant soul seemed to exude an extremely powerful sense of oppression. The golden dragon eyes scanned the entire dragon palace, looking at it indifferently, as if looking down on the world with pride. I have seen what happened today. If you do not want to challenge the majesty of this deity, as the current Dragon King of the West Sea, you should abide by your duties, stay in the Dragon Palace, and complete your mission as the Dragon King. Do you know? The golden dragon virtual image transformed by Aocene finally made a sound. In the voice, there is actually a sense of oppression that comes from the dragon bloodline. Waves of extremely powerful pressure surged toward the surrounding areas as if they were substantial. Even the Dragon Clan elders who had transformed into powerful dragon bodies felt as if they were bearing the pressure of Mount Tai, their whole bodies were shaking violently, and even the sea water was surging, as if they had been greatly shaken. Under the pressure, the bodies of countless Dragon Palace troops could not help but tremble, feeling infinite panic and fear in their hearts. This is one of the most powerful dragons in ancient times, although it is not as pure and flawless as the ancestor of the Dragon Clan. But such a terrible sense of oppression is enough to make any Dragon Clan unable to help but surrender. Even though he knew that Aocene was just a remnant soul hidden in the dragon chair, no dragon dared to feel disrespectful. I just clearly feel the fear and shock from the bottom of my heart. The strong sense of oppression came down, overwhelming, and almost enveloped Aolan. As if bearing the collapse of a mountain thousands of meters high, Aolan couldn't help shaking slightly while holding Nai Chen's hand. But at this moment, she suddenly realized that Nai Chen seemed to hold her hand a little tighter. Because of the fear in her heart, Aoian's little hand was a little cold at this moment. But Nai Chen's big hand holding her exuded a warm temperature. That warm feeling brought not only peace of mind, but also seemed to sweep away the fear in her heart in an instant, allowing her to rebuild her confidence. Noticing Aoian's somewhat dazed gaze, Nai Chen also lowered his head to look at her little face. Without saying a word, but in her smile, there was a gentleness that Aolan had never felt before. At this moment, Aoian's affected heart seemed to have rebuilt an unbreakable barrier. I understand. Raising his head again, in just a moment, the hesitation in Aoian's eyes disappeared completely. Under the gaze of countless dragons, Aolan resolutely left Nai Chen and ran to the throne of the Dragon King, which had transformed into the phantom of Aocene's dragon body. Puff! The sharp little tiger fangs cut his palm, and Aolan waved his hand and sprinkled the blood on the throne of the Dragon King without hesitation. The dragons in the Dragon Palace clearly saw that the blood stains were actually a light golden color.